Nathan Whitmore said the proudest moment of his life was the instant he chose to protect the person who mattered most. He said it on a nationally syndicated business program, seated beneath studio lights in a tailored charcoal suit, one hand resting lightly on the arm of his wheelchair. 6 months earlier, a hotel had collapsed during the Redwood County earthquake. His right leg had been crushed under a concrete beam. 3 surgeries had saved the limb, but the nerves below his knee had never fully recovered. The doctors called his prognosis uncertain. The magazines called his sacrifice heroic. The woman he had protected was not me. She was Serena Blake, the first girl he had ever loved. I watched the interview alone in the darkened living room of the house Nathan and I had shared for 4 years. The volume was low enough that I could hear rain tapping the windows. A fire burned in the gas fireplace, but I had stopped feeling warm long before the host leaned toward him and asked the question that ended our marriage. "Mr. Whitmore, people know you as a successful developer and as one of the survivors of the Redwood quake. What is the one decision in your life you can make without regret?" Nathan looked down at his damaged leg. He took his time. He had always understood the value of silence on camera. A pause made ordinary words sound expensive. When the ceiling came down, he said, "I protected the person I cared about most. I lost the use of a leg, but I would make the same choice again." The host's face brightened. "Your wife?" Nathan smiled without answering. The ambiguity was deliberate. He did not correct her because the public version of Nathan Whitmore was a devoted husband. It was better for Whitmore Development, better for the hospital foundation that carried our family's names, and better for the investors who preferred their heroes married and respectable. Comments raced across the livestream. "Every woman deserves a man like that. His wife is the luckiest person alive. He sacrificed his future for love." I laughed once. It did not sound like laughter. Marriage, I had learned, was a private climate. Outsiders could admire the sunlight while the people inside froze. I closed the video and sat in the dark for almost 2 hours. I did not cry. I had done enough crying in a field hospital 6 months earlier, behind a surgical mask while Nathan's blood soaked through layer after layer of gauze. At 10:30, I called him. He did not answer. I called his executive assistant, Evan Price. "Dr. Hart," Evan said with the weary politeness of a man paid to protect someone else's lies, "Mr. Whitmore is in a meeting. Is there something you'd like me to pass along?" I looked at the clock. At 10:30 at night? A fractional pause. "It's an overseas call." I had no desire to punish Evan for being loyal to the wrong man. "Tell Nathan the divorce papers are on the desk in his study. I want them signed before I leave for Alaska." Alaska? The Taku Valley earthquake. "My hospital is sending a surgical team." Evan went quiet. Then he said, "Dr. Hart, does Mr. Whitmore know?" "He knows now." I ended the call. By midnight I was back in the downtown apartment I had owned before the marriage. It had been rented to a surgical resident for 3 years and had only recently become vacant. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and someone else's laundry detergent. There were no photographs, no monogrammed towels, no medicine cabinet full of Nathan's pain medication. The emptiness felt merciful. While I showered, Nathan called 3 times. The 4th call came as I stood in the kitchen drinking water from a paper cup because I had not unpacked the glasses. "Claire." His voice was clipped. "Where are you?" "At my apartment." "You moved out?" "Yes." "Without talking to me?" I almost admired the question. Nathan had lived elsewhere in every meaningful sense for 3 years, yet my physical departure offended him. "I left a note," I said. "And 47 pages prepared by counsel." There was a silence, followed by a strained breath. "My leg hurts." I closed my eyes. Cold rain made the damaged nerves in his leg flare. Before his late nights became permanent, I used to prepare warm compresses, adjust his medication, and massage the muscles above the injury to prevent spasms. Most nights he rejected my help with the same impatient phrase, "Don't make this into more than it is." Now he reached for pain as a leash. "Call your rehabilitation physician. You're my wife." The word finally broke through my calm. For years of marriage, Nathan, and we never once became husband and wife in private. Don't use the title now as though it means something to you. The silence on the other end became absolute. I had never said it aloud before. We had allowed family, friends, and society photographers to assume we shared a marriage in every sense. Nathan's mother sent me fertility specialists. My mother tried to discuss timing. I accepted every humiliation because admitting the truth felt like confessing that I had agreed to live inside an empty house and pretend it was a home. "Claire," he said at last, his voice rougher, "this isn't a conversation to have over the phone." "You're right. That's what the lawyers are for." I ended the call and blocked his number. Rain whispered against the glass. Somewhere in the city, Nathan sat in a house stocked with every comfort I had arranged around him. His medication was labeled by time of day. His physical therapy bands were in the second drawer of the bedroom dresser. A copper tub waited in the bathroom because I had once read that warm water therapy might ease neuropathic pain. For 3 years, he had told me not to do unnecessary things. That night, I stopped. I slept badly. In the dream, the city shook again. Buildings folded into dust. Sirens screamed through gray air. Children called for parents who would never answer. I ran between rows of injured people beneath a tent that snapped in the wind. My gloves were slick. My mouth tasted of chocolate and blood because a nurse had forced half an energy bar between my teeth, and I had bitten through my lower lip to keep from crying. Then the rescuers carried in 2 people who could not be separated. A man had curved his body over a woman beneath a collapsed ceiling. His hand was locked around her waist even after 72 hours under debris. On his ring finger was the custom platinum band I had chosen to match my own. The man was my husband. The woman was Serena Blake. "Dr. Hart," someone said in the dream, "we need you." I looked down at Nathan's leg. Bone had torn through tissue. His blood pressure was disappearing. His skin had turned the gray color surgeons recognize as the border between life and death. "Dr. Hart." I woke with my hands clenched and my heart racing. My alarm had not yet sounded. On the nightstand, my phone displayed a message from the hospital director. "Come to my office at 7. The Alaska team leaves in 48 hours, ****. I sat up in the unfamiliar bed and touched the scar inside my lower lip. 2 days later, the same television host who had praised Nathan's devotion would stand at the airport send-off and ask me what decision I could make without regret. This time, I would answer honestly. Chapter 2: The Surgery I Could Not Refuse. The first redwood earthquake struck at 4:17 in the morning. I had been asleep in the on-call room at Northwest University Medical Center when the windows rattled and a ceiling tile fell onto the empty chair beside my bed. Seattle was more than 600 miles from the epicenter, but the tremor reached us as a long, rolling warning. Within an hour, our hospital activated its disaster response agreement. By noon, I was on a military transport plane with 23 physicians, nurses, respiratory therapists, and logisticians. For the first 3 days, there was no time to think about anything except survival. We worked in a temporary treatment center built on the grounds of a high school. The gym had become an operating ward. The football field held triage tents. Families wrote names on poster board and taped them to the fence. Every aftershock sent dust sifting from the rafters and made patients cry out. I performed procedures I normally would have scheduled with imaging, specialists, and full surgical teams. There was no scheduling. There was only blood flow, airway, infection, and time. On the 4th day, a search and rescue unit brought in a man and a woman who had been trapped in a collapsed hotel suite. The woman had dehydration, mild hypothermia, bruising, and a fractured wrist. The man was dying. He had used his body to hold up part of the ceiling. A support beam had crushed his right leg. His pelvis was unstable. His kidney function was failing from prolonged compression. Even before the rescuers lowered the stretcher, I recognized the custom wedding band. I remember staring at it for too long. Claire? Dr. Peter Shaw, the anesthesiologist, followed my gaze. Do you know him? I could not answer. The female patient turned her head. Dust streaked her face, but her eyes were clear. Serena. She had left Seattle before graduation, vanished from our social circle, and returned 3 years earlier as the creative director of a luxury hotel brand partnering with Whitmore Development. She had come back with dramatic stories about survival, reinvention, and the life she deserved. Nathan began staying out late within 2 weeks of her return. The rescuers had found them in one of her company's unfinished properties. In a room registered under her name. Nathan's eyes opened briefly. They moved past the lights, past the nurses, and found Serena first. She's safe, he whispered. That was the first thing my husband said after 72 hours beneath concrete. Not my name. Not a request for water. Not a question about his leg. She's stable, I said. His gaze shifted toward me. Recognition came slowly, then horror. Claire. I had imagined confronting him many times. In some versions, I slapped him. In others, I turned away and let him understand that choices had consequences. Reality was less theatrical. His blood pressure crashed. I became his surgeon. Massive transfusion protocol, I said. Get vascular in here. Prepare for external fixation and possible amputation. A nurse touched my arm. Dr. Hart, do you need someone else to take over? Every part of me wanted to say yes. But the nearest orthopedic trauma surgeon was operating on a child with an open pelvic fracture. The vascular specialist was 30 minutes away. Nathan had minutes. No, I said. We start now. I scrubbed while Serena's voice carried from the next bay. Nathan? Where is Nathan? Someone assured her he was being treated. I pushed my hands beneath cold water and watched dust and blood disappear down the drain. My wedding ring hung on a chain beneath my scrubs because surgeons do not wear jewelry in the operating field. I could feel it resting against my sternum like a small, hard accusation. The operation lasted 9 hours. We controlled the bleeding, removed dead tissue, repaired a damaged artery, stabilized the fractures, and fought to preserve the leg. Twice, Nathan's heart rhythm deteriorated. Once, Peter looked at me above his mask and said quietly, Claire, if you want me to call it, no one will blame you. I understood what he meant. Not medically. Personally. No one would blame me if I allowed the impossible to remain impossible. I looked at the monitors. I looked at the man whose vows had turned into public relations language and private absence. Then I looked at my hands. A physician's hands do not get to choose which life deserves saving. Continue, I said. Near dawn, we finished. Nathan lived. When the drapes came down and I saw his face without blood or dust, the grief I had held behind my ribs tore loose. I made it 3 steps from the table before my vision narrowed. The last thing I heard was a nurse calling my name. I woke 12 hours later with an 4 in my arm and a split lower lip. The official explanation was exhaustion. That was true, but incomplete. Nathan spent 7 weeks in the hospital and 5 months in rehabilitation. Serena visited twice before reporters began gathering outside. Then she stopped coming through the front entrance. Nathan told me not to ask questions. I stopped asking because I already knew the answers. I remained involved in his medical care only long enough to transfer him to independent specialists. At home, I organized medications, equipment, appointments, and physical therapy. Nathan accepted assistance when it preserved his dignity and rejected it when it came from me. Don't hover, he said the first time I tried to help him into the shower. You could fall. Then let me fall. I stepped back. He did fall, 3 nights later. Evan found him on the bathroom floor because Nathan called his assistant instead of calling me from the next room. Our marriage had survived an earthquake because I kept his heart beating. It did not survive the truth exposed by the rubble. The morning after his television interview, I stood in Dr. Samuel Green's office while he studied my face. Samuel had directed Northwest's trauma program for 20 years. He had white hair, bright blue eyes, and the disconcerting habit of hearing everything people did not say. You look terrible, he told me. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I know. He slid a file across the desk. Taku Valley. A 6.9 quake. Remote communities, damaged clinic, freezing temperatures, one passable road. The state requested federal support. Our hospital is attaching a surgical unit to a disaster medical assistance team. My palm began to sweat. Images from Redwood flashed behind my eyes: concrete dust, amputations, Nathan's ring. Samuel watched me carefully. You have experience. You also have trauma. Those two facts are in conflict. Send me. Claire. Send me. This isn't penance. I know. It isn't escape either. That time, I did not answer quickly enough. Samuel leaned back. You can go on 3 conditions. 1. You meet with Dr. Patel before departure and agree to daily psychological check-ins. 2. You follow shift limits. No more 30-hour heroics. 3. If the team lead tells you to stand down, you stand down. Agreed. You said that too fast. I learned from my mistakes. He studied me for a moment, then signed the deployment order. Be at the airport Thursday at 6. When I left his office, sunlight poured through the hospital windows. I stood in it until my hands stopped shaking. My phone rang. Evan. Dr. Hart, Mr. Whitmore would like to know where his silver pattern tie is. He has a foundation dinner tonight. I laughed. Tell Mr. Whitmore that if he wants to communicate, he can use his own voice. A pause. He asked me to say he hopes you'll reconsider before doing anything impulsive. Impulsive? His word, not mine. Then use my words. Tell him the papers are not a threat. If he refuses to participate, my attorney will file. He also mentioned both families. Of course he had. Nathan understood leverage. Our parents had known one another for decades. The marriage had begun as a family-approved match between 2 old Seattle families. We had both been single, respectable, and convenient. No one knew I agreed because I had loved him since I was 16. My parents will survive embarrassment, I said. So will his. I ended the call. 2 days later, I would leave for Alaska. Before then, I had one person to tell. My brother. Chapter 3: The Marriage That Never Began. I loved Nathan before I understood that love could become a private form of self-harm. We grew up in the same circle of families: fundraisers, holiday parties, sailing weekends, private school events where adults discussed markets while children learned which forks to use. Nathan was 3 years older, tall and quiet, with the kind of confidence that made everyone else seem over-rehearsed. He noticed Serena Blake when no one else knew what to do with her. Serena attended our school on scholarship. Her father drank, gambled, and sometimes arrived at school demanding money. Her mother developed kidney failure during Serena's junior year. The student council organized a fundraiser. I donated what I could from savings. Nathan donated $100,000 through his family foundation and insisted the gift remain anonymous. Serena discovered the truth anyway. She repaid every student after graduation except him. Then she disappeared. Years later, I learned she had asked Nathan to meet her in a motel the night before she left. She wanted to repay him with the only thing she believed she still owned. He refused. That refusal became the center of his identity. He told himself he had saved her dignity. He never admitted he also spent years regretting it. On our wedding night, he drank too much and fell asleep on the sofa. I sat beside him with a glass of water, still wearing the silk robe my mother had chosen. Near dawn, he whispered Serena's name. "If I'd known you'd leave," he murmured, "I wouldn't have let you walk out of that room." I recorded the sentence because some terrified part of me knew he would deny it. The next morning, I asked for an annulment. Nathan accused me of treating marriage like a game. I played the recording. He sat on the edge of the bed with his face in his hands and told me the entire story. Then he promised Serena belonged to the past. "You are my wife," he said. I agreed to this because I believed we could build something real. "Give me a chance." I gave him 4 years. For the first year, we were careful with each other. Nathan sent flowers to my office. He picked me up after late surgeries. I learned to cook the roast chicken his mother made on holidays. He bought me jewelry because he did not know what else to offer. We looked happy in photographs. On our first anniversary, he reserved a private dining room overlooking Elliott Bay. There were candles, champagne, and a new pair of wedding bands designed to replace the rushed rings from our ceremony. That night, for the first time, he kissed me as though he wanted me. I thought patience had finally been rewarded. Then his whole body went rigid. He pulled away so abruptly that I struck my shoulder against the headboard. "What's wrong?" He would not look at me. I reached for the buttons of his shirt, humiliated but determined not to let fear ruin the moment. He caught my wrist so hard I cried out. "Stop." "Why?" He released me and sat on the edge of the bed, breathing heavily. "Claire, you're too what? Good." The word was not a compliment. "I can't do this to you." "Do what?" "Be my husband?" He left without answering. Serena had returned to Seattle that week. Her hotel company had hired Whitmore Development to renovate a chain of historic properties. Nathan began missing dinner, then sleeping in the guest room, then staying away entirely. When I called, Evan answered. When I had emergency surgery for appendicitis, Evan signed the hospital forms because Nathan was in a confidential negotiation. I became frantic in ways I am ashamed to remember. I called. I pleaded. I reminded Nathan of his promises. I argued that vows mattered even when desire was inconvenient. I told myself persistence was loyalty. Then the Redwood earthquake exposed us. Nathan had not been in a confidential meeting. He had been in Serena's hotel suite. He used his body to shield her. I used my skill to save him. Afterward, I stopped pleading. I delayed filing for divorce because his medical condition was unstable and because I feared becoming the woman who left a disabled husband. The public already considered him a hero. I did not want to be prosecuted in the court of strangers for refusing to continue a marriage they did not understand. His interview freed me. He had used our marriage to decorate his devotion to another woman. I no longer owed him silence. The night before I left for Alaska, I drove to my brother's house on Lake Washington. Alexander Hart answered the door in a dark sweater, still wearing the expression he used in boardrooms when someone had concealed important information. At 38, he managed our family's investment company with the disciplined intensity of the Marine officer he had once been. Our parents traveled constantly and loved us extravagantly but impractically. Alexander had been the person who attended school conferences, checked my grades, taught me to change a tire, and told me uncomfortable truths. "You look awful," he said. Samuel said the same thing. "Samuel Green? Why are you talking to the trauma director after dinner?" I stepped inside. "I'm deploying to Alaska tomorrow." Alexander stared at me. "Before you start," I said, "the hospital knows about my PTSD. I have restrictions. I'm not going alone. You filed for divorce and volunteered for another earthquake in the same week? Yes. Claire. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you are setting fire to every room and calling the smoke fresh air. That was Alexander, brutally accurate even when I needed gentleness. I handed him a copy of the petition. He read the first page, then the settlement proposal, then the timeline prepared by my attorney. His jaw tightened as the details accumulated. He was with Serena when the hotel collapsed. Yes. You operated on him. Yes. And he went on television and described protecting her as the proudest moment of his life while allowing everyone to assume he meant you. Yes. Alexander stood so abruptly that the chair scraped the floor. I am going to his house. No. I am not asking. Neither am I. He looked at me. For a moment, we were 16 and 20, arguing over whether I could take the car after dark. I chose him, I said. You warned me before the wedding. You asked if I was sure. I said I was. I have to end this myself. Alexander's anger changed shape. You don't have to prove adulthood by suffering alone. I'm not alone. I have counsel. I have you. And tomorrow you will be in a disaster zone. Doing the work I trained to do. He closed his eyes, then opened them. Do you remember Cole Mercer? I did. Cole had served with Alexander overseas. He had attended 2 family holidays years earlier, broad-shouldered, blunt, and uncomfortable in formal clothes. He had watched rooms the way some people watched movies. After leaving the military, he joined a federal urban search and rescue task force and later became operations director for Alaska's Emergency Response Network. Alexander entered a number into my phone. Cole is coordinating ground operations in Taku Valley. If you need anything, you call him. I will have a team lead. You call Cole. Alex. Claire. I surrendered. Fine. He took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant because neither of us wanted to cook. Halfway through the meal, he said, when you applied to medical school, I accused you of doing it because Nathan played basketball and kept getting injured. You were not entirely wrong. I was wrong about the important part. You stayed because you were good at it. I looked down at my hands. You saved him because you are a surgeon, Alexander continued. Not because you loved him. Do not confuse professional integrity with permission for him to keep hurting you. I nodded. Outside my apartment, he hugged me hard enough to make breathing difficult. Come back, he said. I plan to. That's not a joke. I know. At 6 the next morning, I boarded a bus with the medical team. Nathan was waiting at the airport in his wheelchair. Chapter 4, The Answer on Camera. The send-off took place in a private terminal at Seattle-Tacoma, beneath banners from the hospital, the governor's office, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Families stood behind velvet ropes. Local reporters clustered near the buses. Volunteers pinned small red and white ribbons to our jackets. I was fastening mine when I saw Nathan. He sat near the edge of the crowd, wearing a dark overcoat over his suit. Evan stood behind him, one hand on the wheelchair. Nathan looked as if he had not slept. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and his damaged leg was wrapped beneath a heavy blanket. For a second, the old reflex returned. I noticed the tension around his mouth and calculated whether the cold had increased his nerve pain. Then I remembered Serena in the rubble. Nathan lifted a hand. I turned away. A reporter approached me with a microphone. I recognized her from the interview, Julia Perez, the host who had asked Nathan about regret. She recognized me too, though I could see she had not yet connected me to him. Dr. Hart, you're a trauma surgeon and a veteran of the Redwood response. Before you leave, can you tell us the decision you're proudest of? The question was nearly identical. Perhaps media producers kept a file of safe questions for public heroes. Behind Julia, Nathan's face changed. He understood before anyone else did. I could have offered the expected answer. I could have spoken about medicine, service, or courage. The hospital's communications director stood 10 feet away, already smiling in anticipation. I looked directly at Nathan. 6 months ago, I said, my husband was brought to my field hospital after using his body to protect his lover during the Redwood earthquake. I knew exactly why he was injured and exactly whom he had chosen. I still did everything in my power to save his life. That is the decision I can live with. The terminal went silent. Julia lowered the microphone a fraction. Your husband? I nodded toward Nathan. Cameras turned. The public hero sat frozen in his wheelchair. Evan's hand tightened on the handles. Nathan tried to rise, bracing himself on the armrests. Pain crossed his face. For one irrational second, I thought he might stand through force of outrage alone. Claire, he called. I stepped onto the bus. Tara Kim, a surgical nurse who had been with me in Redwood, slid into the seat beside mine. She was 4 years younger, sharp-eyed, and constitutionally incapable of pretending not to notice drama. Are you okay? She whispered. I looked through the window. Nathan had made it halfway upright before Evan forced him back into the chair. Reporters surrounded him. Julia Perez looked as though she had just been handed the story of her career. For the first time in 3 years, I took a full breath without feeling something press against my ribs. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm done protecting the wrong person. My phone began vibrating before the bus left the terminal. Alexander. Evan. Samuel. The hospital communications office. Unknown numbers. News alerts. I switched it to airplane mode. When our flight landed in Juneau, I took a photograph through the window, mountains, slate-colored water, clouds torn open by light. I posted it with 5 words. I arrived. Life goes on ****. By the time we collected our equipment, the post had hundreds of comments. Most were messages of support. One came from Alexander. Cole is in the background. Tallest guy. Black jacket. Do not pretend you didn't see him ****. I looked up. A line of emergency vehicles waited outside the terminal. Beside the lead SUV stood a man who made everyone around him look slightly underbuilt. Cole Mercer had changed since I last saw him. His hair was shorter, his face more weathered, and a pale scar ran from his left temple toward his cheekbone. He wore a black weatherproof jacket with an emergency response patch and carried a radio clipped to his shoulder. The years had not softened him. They had made him more precise. His gaze found mine immediately. For a moment, the noise of luggage carts and radios disappeared. Then Tara leaned close to my ear. Oh, that's unfair. What is? That man. No one should be allowed to look like that while holding a clipboard. I laughed despite myself. Cole approached the team lead, introduced himself, and began assigning vehicles. When he reached me, his expression shifted by a degree only someone watching closely would notice. Dr. Hart. Mr. Mercer. Cole is fine. Claire is fine. He took my equipment case before I could object. Your brother threatened to fly up here if I let anything happen to you. My brother threatens people as a form of affection. I know. We surfed together. We loaded into 3 SUVs for the 6-hour trip inland. Roads near Taku Valley had fractured, and the final section required slow travel over temporary gravel. Tara sat beside me in the back seat and spent the first hour pretending not to admire Cole in the front passenger seat. The landscape turned harsher as we climbed, black spruce, frozen rivers, distant white peaks. Cell service disappeared. Snow began drifting across the road. Cole briefed us without drama. 3 villages had sustained major structural damage. The local clinic was unusable. A school had been converted into a shelter. Temperatures were expected to fall below 0 Fahrenheit within 48 hours. A winter storm could cut the road entirely. "You will be tired," he said. "Tired people make brave decisions that get other people killed. Follow rotation schedules. If my team tells you an area is unsafe, it is unsafe." His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. I suspected Alexander had told him more than necessary. "Understood," I said. We arrived after dark. Portable lights illuminated a valley filled with dust, steam, snow, and movement. A church had lost its steeple. Several homes had collapsed. People wrapped in blankets stood around burn barrels. The treatment tent smelled of diesel fuel, antiseptic, wet wool, and fear. There was no time for memory. A boy with internal bleeding needed immediate surgery. An older woman had an open fracture. A pregnant patient was contracting after being trapped in a damaged house. For the next 22 hours, I worked. Not to escape Nathan. Not to prove anything. Because people were alive and might remain alive if my hands did what they had been trained to do. When I finally stepped outside, my legs had gone numb from cold. Tara had filled an 4-fluid bag with warm water and wrapped it in a towel for me to hold. A man hurried across the snow and dropped to his knees in front of me. He spoke rapidly in Tlingit, tears running down his face. He held out a woven cedar bracelet and a small bundle of smoked salmon. I looked helplessly toward Cole. He appeared beside us and translated. "You operated on his wife. She was the woman with the ruptured spleen. He says you gave his children their mother back." I barely remembered her. There had been so many patients. "Tell him I can't take food his family may need." Cole spoke to the man. After a long exchange, the man reluctantly kept the salmon but insisted on the bracelet. I accepted it with both hands. "I don't remember her face," I admitted after he left. "He will remember yours." "That isn't fair. There were people I couldn't save." The grief rose suddenly, sharpened by exhaustion. Cole's voice remained steady. "Those deaths are not a verdict on you. You rest now, then you save whoever comes next." Snow melted on my eyelashes. He reached up with a gloved hand and brushed away the moisture. "Don't cry out here," he said. "Your skin will freeze." His glove smelled faintly of leather and wood smoke. Behind me, a familiar voice broke across the cold. "Claire." I turned. Nathan sat in a wheelchair beneath the floodlights, Evan behind him, both of them covered in road dust and snow. He had followed me to Alaska. Chapter 5: A Wheelchair in the Snow. Nathan should not have been in Taku Valley. The temporary road was rough enough to shake bolts loose from emergency vehicles. Temperatures had dropped below 10 degrees. His physicians had warned him that cold and prolonged sitting could worsen swelling, nerve pain, and circulation in his injured leg. Yet he sat beneath a floodlight in a custom wheelchair fitted with all-terrain tires, his jaw locked against discomfort. Evan looked worse. His hair was windblown, his glasses fogged, and the expression on his face said he had spent the last 12 hours trying to prevent a wealthy man from making a catastrophic decision. "Claire," Nathan said again. Cole moved half a step closer to me. Not in front of me. He did not assume I needed protection. He merely made his presence available. That small difference mattered. I looked at Nathan. "Did you sign the papers?" His eyes flicked toward Cole's hand, which had just fallen away from my face. "We need to talk." "Then you did not sign them." "I came all this way." "That was your choice." Evan cleared his throat. "Dr. Hart, Mr. Whitmore arranged emergency shipments. Winter tents, blankets, portable heaters, antibiotics, satellite phones. The first cargo plane lands in 2 hours." I glanced at Cole. He nodded. The manifest was cleared through state emergency management. The supplies are legitimate and badly needed. Nathan seized on the approval. I'm not here to interfere. You already are. His face tightened. You exposed our marriage on live television. You turned Serena into a public love story and borrowed my title to make it respectable. I corrected the record. I never said the woman was you. The defense was so carefully accurate that I nearly admired it. No, I said. You simply smiled while millions of people assumed it. That is what you do best, Nathan. You let silence lie for you. Wind drove powdery snow across the open ground. A generator coughed, then stabilized. From the treatment tent came the cry of a child and Tara's voice asking for another nebulizer. I stepped away. Nathan caught the wheelchair rim and pushed forward. The tire sank into soft snow. Claire, please. I had heard Nathan command boardrooms, reporters, contractors, and family members. I had rarely heard him plead. I turned back. I have patience. You have lawyers. Use them. His gaze shifted toward Cole. And what does he have? Cole answered before I could. A disaster response to run. Nathan's humiliation was immediate. Men like him were accustomed to other men recognizing rank, money, and reputation. Cole recognized operational relevance. In Taku Valley, Nathan's net worth could purchase supplies. It could not purchase authority. I returned to the treatment tent. For the next 6 hours, I refused to ask where Nathan was. The shipments arrived. Pallets of insulated blankets, cots, medical oxygen, and high-calorie emergency food were unloaded under Cole's supervision. Nathan remained near the logistics trailer, unable to do physical work but insisting on coordinating payment and transport. His contribution helped. That fact irritated me more than it should have. People are easier to leave when they are entirely monstrous. Nathan was not. He could be generous, disciplined, and brave. He was also selfish in the intimate places where generosity mattered most. Both truths occupied the same body. Near midnight, Samuel's condition about shift limits caught up with me. Tara blocked the entrance to the surgical area. You're done for 6 hours. There's a man with possible compartment syndrome. Dr. Mason has him. He may need a fasciotomy. Dr. Mason trained at Johns Hopkins. He knows what a fasciotomy is. I attempted to step around her. Tara raised a gloved hand. Your pupils are uneven because you're exhausted, your fingers are shaking, and Dr. Patel will personally fly to Alaska and murder both of us if I let you continue. That's not how psychiatry works. Go sleep. I went. The staff sleeping area occupied 2 classrooms in the damaged school. Cots lined the walls. I had just removed my boots when someone knocked on the open door. Evan stood in the hall. Mr. Whitmore's leg is spasming, he said. The clinic physician examined him, but he won't take the stronger medication. He says it makes him confused. I stared at him. Call his rehabilitation team. There is no signal stable enough for video. Then call the clinic physician again. Evan looked down. He asked for you. Old habits are not erased by decisions. They are pathways worn into the nervous system. I followed Evan to the logistics trailer. Nathan lay on a narrow cot, his injured leg elevated on folded blankets. Sweat darkened his shirt despite the cold. The muscles above his knee contracted visibly beneath the fabric. I did not touch him until I had reviewed the medication record and spoken to the local physician. Then I performed a limited exam, checked circulation, assessed pain, and adjusted the positioning. You need the muscle relaxant, I said. It makes me feel trapped in my head. Then take half the prescribed dose and allow Evan to monitor you. He looked at my hands. You used to do this without acting like I was a case file. You used to reject it. I was angry. At whom? He closed his eyes. I waited. At myself, he said. It was the first answer that sounded true. I straightened. Take the medication. Claire, the interview. No. I wasn't thinking. You thought for 14 seconds before answering. I watched you. He opened his eyes. I meant the decision. I was proud I kept someone alive. You said the person you cared about most. I thought Serena was going to die. And I thought you were going to die while I held your artery between my fingers. He flinched. I had never described the operation to him. His surgeons had explained injuries and procedures, but not what it had cost me to stand at that table. You were conscious for seconds, I continued. Your first question was whether she was safe. When your pressure crashed, I opened your leg. I removed dead muscle. I repaired the vessel that kept you from bleeding out. I watched your heart stop twice. Do you know what I said when the anesthesiologist asked if we should call it? Nathan's lips parted. I said continue. Tears filled his eyes. I did my duty. Then I went home and became invisible again. So do not come to a disaster zone and use pain to make me your wife. I turned toward the door. I watched the surgery report, he said. I stopped. After the interview, Evan found the field documentation. I saw the footage from the body camera in the operating tent. I saw you collapse. I looked at Evan. He appeared deeply uncomfortable. Those recordings are protected medical material. I authorized access to my own record, Nathan said. I didn't know you were the surgeon until I woke in Seattle. I didn't know what it looked like. Now you do. Yes. His voice broke on the word. I left before grief could turn into tenderness. Outside, Cole stood beneath the trailer awning with 2 cups of coffee. You eavesdrop on medical conversations? I asked. No. Evan said you were inside. I brought coffee. He handed me one. How much did you hear? Enough to know you need sleep. Not enough to offer an opinion. We walked toward the school. Snow squeaked beneath our boots. He brought useful supplies, I said. He did. That doesn't change what he did. No. You are not going to tell me people are complicated? Cole took a drink. People are complicated. Consequences aren't. I looked at him. You can be grateful for blankets and still divorce the man who bought them, he said. For the first time that night, I smiled. Chapter 6: The Woman Who Followed Him. The storm arrived before sunrise. Snow erased the edges of buildings and turned the treatment center into a collection of glowing tents in a white void. Helicopters were grounded. The temporary road closed after a truck slid into a ditch. For 36 hours, Taku Valley became an island. Nathan could not leave. Neither could Serena, although no one knew she was there until she pushed into my examination tent while I was listening to a baby's lungs. Claire, I need to speak with you. She wore a cream-colored down coat unsuitable for field work and boots that had never been intended for mud. Her hair was pulled into a sleek knot. Even after a difficult journey, she looked composed enough for a photograph. The mother holding the baby stared at her. Behind her, 12 patients waited in folding chairs. I kept the stethoscope against the child's back. Leave. This will only take a minute. The infant coughed, a wet, tight sound. Anger arrived cleanly, without confusion. You are obstructing medical care during a declared disaster. Leave now. Serena folded her arms. Nathan came here because of you. You made a private matter public, and now you're acting as if you're the victim. Tara stepped between us. Ma'am, the exit is behind you. Don't touch me. Then move voluntarily. Serena raised her voice. Claire, he promised to take responsibility for me. You cannot humiliate him into changing what happened. I reached for my radio. Cole, I need security at the pediatric treatment tent. He arrived in less than 2 minutes with a state trooper. Nathan and Evan followed, struggling through the snow. Nathan's face went white when he saw Serena. What are you doing here? She turned on him. Making sure you don't rewrite history because your wife embarrassed you on television. You need to leave. Serena laughed sharply. You brought $3 million worth of supplies to prove something to her, and now you're telling me to leave? You said you would take care of me. You said after the earthquake everything would change. Every patient in the tent heard her. Nathan looked at me. I felt nothing. That absence of feeling was more final than rage. Get her out of the treatment area, Cole told the trooper. She can wait in the administrative shelter until the road opens. Serena pulled away. I came voluntarily. You can't detain me. I'm not detaining you. I'm removing you from a restricted medical zone. She pointed at Nathan. Tell him. Tell him what you said in the hospital. Nathan's hands tightened on the wheelchair rims. I told you I would make sure you had medical care and housing while you recovered, he said. I did not promise you my marriage. You didn't have a marriage. The words struck with enough force that the tent fell quiet. Serena looked at me triumphantly. He never touched you. Did you tell everyone that part? He couldn't. Because every time he looked at you, he saw everything you weren't. Tara inhaled as if preparing to commit a felony. I raised a hand. You're right, I said. Serena blinked. He did not want me. He married me anyway. I stayed anyway. Those were our failures. But you came back knowing he was married, met him in hotel rooms, and accepted his protection while I operated on him. That was your choice. He loved me first. Then you should have demanded he become free before you accepted anything from him. Love does not make adultery noble. It only gives selfish people better dialogue. Her face changed. Nathan whispered, Claire. I ignored him. You will not enter another patient area, I told Serena. You will not contact me outside legal channels. If you interfere with care again, the hospital and the state will document it. Cole signaled to the trooper. Serena was escorted out through the snow, still shouting Nathan's name. The baby's mother looked at me with wide eyes. I washed my hands, returned the stethoscope to the child's back, and said, I'm sorry for the interruption. His lungs sound congested, but his oxygen is stable. We're going to start treatment and watch him closely. Work continued. Later, Nathan waited outside the tent. I am sorry, he said. For which part? All of it. That's not an answer. Snow collected on his blanket. Evan stood several yards away, giving us privacy he should have stopped providing years earlier. Nathan looked toward the shelter where Serena had been taken. I thought I owed her. You did owe her honesty. You owed me the same. When the building collapsed, I didn't choose. I reacted. Instinct is a choice made before language. He swallowed. I protected her because I had spent years imagining that moment. Saving her. Being the man who didn't let her disappear again. It was the clearest confession he had ever given me. And afterward, I asked, why did you stay with me? His answer came slowly. Because you were good. Because our families approved. Because you made my life stable. Because I believed wanting you would eventually follow. It didn't. I did love you. Not in a way I could live on. The pain in his face was genuine. I no longer mistook genuine pain for entitlement to forgiveness. I will sign, he said. When we return. Good. I changed the settlement. My attorney will review it. I want you to receive half of my marital assets. Money does not turn betrayal into fairness. No. But I used our marriage to build a public image. I benefited from your family's network. You managed my recovery while I treated your care like an insult. It is not payment for the leg. It is accountability. I studied him. This was the man I had once wanted, not devoted, not healed, but honest enough to name the ugliness. He had arrived years too late. Have your lawyer send it, I said. His eyes closed briefly. Is there any chance? No. He nodded as though the word had physical weight. I came here thinking I could understand what you went through, he said. I was wrong. I cannot understand it. I can only see that I made you carry it alone. A medic called my name from the tent. I turned away. Claire. I glanced back. I'm sorry, Nathan said. I will sign. For years I had imagined those words would feel like victory. They felt like a door closing quietly. Chapter 7: What the Cold Reveals. Disaster work strips people down to their useful parts. In ordinary life, Nathan's wealth created distance. Serena's beauty created permission. My family name created assumptions. Cole's size made strangers wary. In Taku Valley, none of those things mattered for long. A person either carried equipment, followed instructions, treated patients, translated, cooked, drove, repaired, or got out of the way. Nathan learned to get out of the way. After Serena's removal from the treatment area, he stopped seeking me. He used his satellite connection to accelerate shipments, secured fuel from one of Whitmore Development's remote contractors, and paid for temporary housing units without placing his name on them. When local news crews arrived after the road reopened, he declined interviews. That restraint did not earn reconciliation. It did earn respect. Serena left on the first outbound convoy. Before she did, she sent me a message through Evan. You think you won because he chose guilt over love. He will never love you the way he loved me, ***. I deleted it. She was still measuring victory by possession of a man who had failed both of us. The medical team remained for another 10 days. Acute trauma cases decreased, but pneumonia, frostbite, dehydration, and medication disruptions filled the clinic. I moved between surgical follow-ups and general care, consulting specialists by satellite when connections allowed. Cole appeared at irregular intervals with practical solutions. A heater failed, he found another. A medication shipment stalled, he moved it onto a National Guard flight. A frightened 9-year-old refused to enter the procedure tent. Cole sat outside in the snow and showed him how to fold a paper crane from a supply form. He did not ask about Nathan. That made me tell him. We were standing near a burn barrel at 3 in the morning, drinking instant coffee that tasted like melted cardboard. The northern lights had appeared faintly above the mountains, green ribbons moving across black sky. He agreed to sign, I said. Cole nodded. How do you feel? Everyone keeps asking that as though there should be one answer. There usually isn't. Relieved. Furious. Sad. Embarrassed that I stayed. Afraid people will think I left because he became disabled. People who need a simple villain will create one. That's comforting. It wasn't meant to be. I smiled into my cup. Cole leaned against a snow-covered barrier. For what it's worth, I knew about him before the injury. Alexander told you? Your brother tells me very little and expects me to know everything. That's accurate. I saw you at your wedding. I turned toward him. You were there? In the back. I had just returned from deployment. I left before dinner. I tried to remember. The ballroom had held 400 guests. I had spent the evening smiling while Nathan drank enough to whisper another woman's name. Why did you leave? Cole stared into the fire. Because watching you marry him felt like attending the funeral of something that had never lived. My breath caught. He continued before I could respond. I am not telling you this because you're getting divorced. I am telling you because your brother will eventually say something badly, and I would prefer you hear the truth from me. What truth? I liked you before you knew I existed. I knew you existed. You called me Alex's enormous friend. I covered my face. I said that? At Thanksgiving. You were 22. That was not romantic interest. I noticed. He smiled, and the severity of his face changed completely. Cole, I am married. For now. And damaged. His expression hardened. Do not describe yourself with the language of the man who hurt you. You don't know what 4 years did to me. No. I know what you did in the last 2 weeks. You worked, listened when ordered to rest, treated people who could give you nothing, and maintained boundaries while your husband crossed a continent to test them. That is not damage. That is strength with scar tissue. The words were too kind. Kindness had become suspicious to me. I have nothing to offer, I said. Then offer nothing. What does that mean? It means I am not asking you for anything. A call came over his radio. Search crews had found movement near a partially collapsed cabin. Cole set down his coffee. I have to go. Be careful. He looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Always. He returned 11 hours later with a dislocated shoulder, a torn sleeve, and a 7-year-old girl carried against his chest. The child had survived inside a pantry beneath a fallen beam. Cole's team had crawled through a space barely wider than his shoulders to reach her. When he brought her into the medical tent, his face was gray with fatigue. Her name is Emma, he said. Possible dehydration, cold exposure, left ankle injury. I took the child. What happened to your shoulder? Later. Cole. She comes first. I understood him then in a way that frightened me. Nathan had once made sacrifice look romantic because it centered his devotion. Cole made sacrifice look like work. No cameras. No mythology. No woman turned into proof of his character. After Emma was stable, I reduced Cole's shoulder with the help of another physician. He did not complain. He did, however, swear creatively when the joint moved back into place. Alexander said you had a high pain tolerance, I said. Alexander lies when it amuses him. I secured his arm in a sling. No field work for 48 hours. 24. 48. 36. Do you negotiate with earthquakes too? They are less stubborn. For the first time in months, I laughed until tears came. Cole watched me quietly. What? Nothing. You are staring. I am appreciating a successful medical outcome. Your shoulder? Your laugh. The tenderness in his voice made me step back. He noticed and did not move closer. No requests, he reminded me. I nodded. Outside, snow began to fall more gently. Chapter 8, The Things Money Cannot Repair. We left Taku Valley 14 days after arrival. The morning of departure, families gathered beside the temporary airstrip. Children held handmade signs. Elders offered prayers. The man whose wife I had operated on tied another cedar bracelet beside the first and refused to let me return it. Nathan's convoy had departed 2 days earlier. He left without asking to see me. Evan delivered an envelope containing a signed temporary separation agreement, authorization for independent financial disclosure, and a handwritten note. I thought love was proven by the person I would die for. You taught me it is also proven by the person whose daily life I refuse to see. I am sorry I saw you too late, ***. I folded the note and placed it inside the envelope. I did not answer. Cole drove us to the airfield. Tara sat in front this time, insisting she became carsick in the back. She spent the first hour asking Cole questions about search and rescue equipment and the second hour pretending those questions were professional. When we reached the plane, Cole helped unload bags with one arm still in a sling. "You are violating medical advice," I told him. "I am moving luggage with my uninjured arm." "You are impossible. I've been called worse by better doctors." As we shook hands, he pressed something small into my palm. A turquoise pendant, smooth and oval, crossed by dark natural lines. "Cole." "It belonged to my grandmother. She was Tlingit. She gave it to me before my first deployment and said turquoise carried travelers safely home. I cannot take a family heirloom." "You can borrow it." "For how long?" "Until you no longer need help getting home." The answer was unfairly effective. "This feels like a request," I said. "It is not. It has the shape of one." "Then call it collateral." I closed my fingers around the stone. "Thank you." "You're welcome, Claire." On the flight, Tara examined the pendant and made a sound of deep suspicion. "That man gave you his grandmother's turquoise?" "He said it was a loan." Men do not loan heirlooms to women they consider casual acquaintances. "You were attracted to him 3 days ago." "I have principles. Once a man gives my supervisor ancestral jewelry, I retreat with dignity." I rested my forehead against the window and watched Alaska disappear beneath clouds. Seattle felt too soft when we returned. Heated cars, clean streets, restaurants glowing behind glass. I went directly from the airport to the hospital for debriefing and psychological assessment. Dr. Nisha Patel made me describe the public confrontation, Nathan's arrival, Serena's disruption, and Cole's confession. "That's an impressive amount of emotional material for 2 weeks," she said. It was efficient. Trauma survivors often confuse efficiency with control. Are psychiatrists trained to make ordinary sentences irritating? Yes. It is a fellowship requirement. She recommended 6 weeks away from disaster response, reduced overnight calls, and continued therapy. I accepted all 3. That was new. Before Taku Valley, I would have treated rest as surrender. Now I understood that exhaustion had made me easier to erase. A person with no reserve accepts crumbs because crumbs require less energy than demanding a meal. My attorney, Rachel Monroe, scheduled a settlement meeting for the following week. Nathan attended by video from his rehabilitation center. His face was thinner. The scratch Serena later gave him had not yet appeared, but a bruise darkened one cheekbone. "What happened?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Physical therapy. I misjudged a transfer." Rachel glanced at me, silently reminding me that medical concern was not marital consent. Nathan's attorney presented the offer. Half of the marital increase in Whitmore Development shares. The waterfront house. My apartment free of any claim. A cash settlement reflecting unpaid care during his recovery. Full confidentiality waived so I could correct false public narratives. No challenge to divorce grounds. No request for spousal support from either party. It was more generous than Washington law would guarantee. "Why?" I asked. Nathan looked directly into the camera. "Because our marriage benefited me. Your family's introductions helped my first developments. Your presence made me appear stable. Your medical care saved my life. I treated all of it as background. This does not buy forgiveness. I know. It does not buy friendship. I know. It certainly does not buy another chance." His mouth tightened. "I know." Rachel requested a private break. "In the hallway," she said, "the offer is financially strong and legally clean. I want forensic review of the valuation, but I see no trap. He is trying to punish himself. Perhaps. That does not make the assets imaginary. I don't want his guilt." "Then don't take guilt. Take equitable compensation and use it for something useful." I thought of the underfunded trauma program in Taku Valley. The families sleeping in cars outside Northwest because rural transfers could not afford hotels. The nurses who bought pediatric supplies with their own money. Can part of the settlement endow disaster surgery training? Rachel smiled. It can after it belongs to you. We returned to the meeting. I accepted subject to valuation and tax review. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment. Thank you, he said. Do not thank me. I'm not thanking you for the divorce. I'm thanking you for making the money mean something better than I did. The waiting period meant our divorce would not be final for several months. We established physical separation, financial boundaries, and communication through counsel except for medical emergencies. Nathan respected the boundary. For 3 weeks. Then Serena appeared outside the rehabilitation center and scratched his face when she learned the settlement amount. Evan called because Nathan refused to file a police report and Serena threatened to speak to the media. This is not my problem, I said. I know, Evan replied. I needed to hear someone say it. Tell Nathan he cannot build redemption by allowing another person to abuse him. Would you tell him yourself? No. Evan sighed. Understood. That evening, Alexander came to my apartment carrying takeout and a bottle of wine. He noticed the turquoise pendant hanging from my phone case. That belongs to Cole. He said it belonged to his grandmother. It did. He told me it was a loan. Alexander laughed so hard he had to set down the food. What? Cole carried that stone through 2 deployments, a helicopter crash, and 3 search operations. He once punched a man who tried to steal the bag it was in. The pendant suddenly felt hot in my hand. I should return it. Or consider why he gave it to you. I am getting divorced. He knows. I am not ready. Then tell him. Cole understands direct language. He struggles with all other forms. I called that night. Cole answered on the second ring. Claire. My brother says the turquoise is not a casual loan. A long pause. Your brother is a traitor. Is he wrong? No. I closed my eyes. Cole, I cannot do this. Not now. I don't know how much of myself is left, and whatever remains would not be fair to hand someone as a broken promise. His voice was quiet. I told you not to use that language. The answer is still no. I know. You're not angry? Disappointed is not the same as angry. What should I do with the pendant? Keep it until you feel safe. Then decide. And if I never decide in your favor? Then you still got home. After the call, I sat by the window with the stone in my palm. Some gifts were not cages. I was still learning the difference. Chapter 9, The Public Record. The interview clip followed me home. By the time I returned to Northwest, it had been viewed 20 million times. Half the internet called me courageous. The other half called me cruel for humiliating a disabled man in public. People analyzed Nathan's face frame by frame. They compared photographs of Serena and me, ranking beauty, age, clothing, and perceived femininity as though adultery were a competition decided by cheekbones. Strangers found my hospital biography and left reviews beneath articles I had written about vascular trauma. Amazing surgeon, terrible wife. She saved him only so she could destroy him later. No wonder he chose the other woman. The hospital communications office asked me not to respond. I had no desire to respond. Silence was not always surrender. Sometimes it was refusing to feed people who ate pain for entertainment. Samuel called me into his office on my first day back. The board is nervous, he said. About my surgery outcomes? No. About attention. Donors dislike uncertainty. Nathan is one of the largest donors. He resigned from the foundation board this morning. I stared at him. Samuel slid his laptop across the desk. Nathan had released a statement through Whitmore Development. It did not mention Serena by name. It did not describe our private life in detail. It said his earlier interview had allowed the public to form a false impression that the person he protected was not his wife, and that his wife had later performed the surgery that saved him despite the personal betrayal involved. He accepted responsibility for the end of the marriage and asked the media to stop contacting me, my hospital, and the medical team. He had also withdrawn from the hospital foundation until our divorce and related financial matters were resolved. He wrote that? I asked. According to his office, he refused the version prepared by public relations and dictated this himself. I read the statement twice. It was the first public action Nathan had taken that cost him something and did not ask me to reward him. Does this solve the board's concern? It helps. But some members believe you exercised poor judgment at the airport. They are welcome to review my clinical judgment. Samuel's eyebrows rose. That is more or less what I told them. More or less. I used less diplomatic language. I smiled. He closed the laptop. Your operating privileges remain unchanged. Your schedule will not. 2 elective cases a week for the first month, no overnight trauma lead, mandatory therapy. You enjoy authority too much. I enjoy keeping gifted surgeons alive. Returning to the operating room was harder than returning to Alaska. In Taku Valley, everything had been urgent and external. At Northwest, the hallways were familiar enough to hold ghosts. I passed the room where I had signed Nathan's transfer orders. I smelled the same surgical prep used during his reconstruction. A patient arrived after a construction accident with a crushed leg, and my hands began shaking before I entered the room. The old version of me would have hidden it. I found Peter Shaw in the scrub area. I need you to take lead, I said. He looked at me, then nodded without question. You'll assist? Yes. I did. The case went well. Afterward, I sat in an empty consultation room until the shaking stopped. Dr. Patel joined me by video. You made the correct decision, she said. It felt like failure. Because your definition of competence excludes needing anyone. In surgery, needing someone can kill a patient. Refusing someone can too. That sentence remained with me. I began noticing how often medicine rewarded the same behavior that had damaged my marriage: self-erasure, endless availability, pride disguised as endurance. Young residents bragged about working 30 hours without food. Nurses apologized for illness. Surgeons treated emotional injury as a defect of character. I had survived by becoming useful. I wanted to learn whether I could remain valuable without disappearing. Rachel completed the independent valuation of Nathan's settlement offer. The numbers were accurate. Whitmore Development had grown substantially during our marriage, and my indirect contributions were documented through family introductions, foundation work, and unpaid care after the earthquake. The revised agreement would give me enough to fund a disaster surgery fellowship without touching my own family assets. I asked Samuel to help design it. A fellowship, he said. Surgeons trained in austere care, logistics, ethics, and psychological resilience. Not just how to operate without equipment. How to stop before they become unsafe. You want to institutionalize the lessons you refuse to learn voluntarily. Exactly. We named it the Harbor Response Initiative, not after me, Nathan, or either family. The first funding supported simulation labs, rural hospital partnerships, and housing for families of transferred trauma patients. Nathan signed the endowment documents without requesting naming rights. 3 months after Alaska, he asked through Rachel whether I would attend a private meeting with him and a mediator. You can decline, Rachel said. What does he want? To discuss one non-financial term. The meeting took place in a law office with glass walls and a view of Puget Sound. Nathan arrived using forearm crutches instead of the wheelchair. His right leg was braced from ankle to thigh. Each step required concentration. I noticed the effort and felt no impulse to help. That, too, was progress. He sat across from me. I want the confidentiality clause removed entirely. Why? Because it protects me more than you. If you ever need to discuss what happened in therapy, writing, teaching, or public work, I don't want the agreement used to silence you. Rachel looked impressed despite herself. Your attorneys recommended this? I asked. They recommended the opposite. Serena may speak. She already has. He placed a magazine on the table. Serena had sold an interview describing herself as Nathan's true love and me as the politically convenient wife who refused to release him. She claimed he had planned to leave me before the earthquake. Is that true? I asked. Nathan did not evade. I had spoken to an attorney. I had not filed. I kept delaying because I wanted the stability of our marriage and the fantasy of her. The honesty hurt less than the years of ambiguity. Then she is not lying about that part. No. Did you tell her you would marry her? I said we would discuss the future after the hotel project opened. I let her hear what she wanted. You let everyone hear what they wanted. Yes. He looked older than he had at the airport. Not less handsome. Less protected by his own story. I gave the magazine a statement confirming the affair, he said. I did not attack her. I corrected the claim that you trapped me. Why tell me? Because the old version of me would have asked you to protect my reputation. I signed the amendment removing confidentiality. Before we left, Nathan said, I started therapy. Good. The therapist asked what I miss about you. I waited. I listed everything you did. The medication. The meals. The way you remembered everyone's birthdays. She asked what I missed about who you were when you weren't serving me. I couldn't answer. The room seemed very quiet. That is the answer, I said. He nodded. For the first time, I saw him cry without feeling responsible for stopping it. Chapter 10, The 90-Day Distance. Washington required a waiting period after a divorce petition was filed. The law could measure 90 days. It could not measure the distance between the moment a marriage ended and the moment the people inside accepted it. For me, the marriage ended beneath television lights. For Nathan, it ended in stages. The first stage was the airport. The second was Alaska. The third was learning that accountability did not function as a key that reopened my door. During the waiting period, we communicated through attorneys. He moved into an accessible condominium near his rehabilitation center. I sold none of our shared furniture because most of it had been purchased through accounts his attorneys were reviewing. Instead, I returned to my apartment with 2 suitcases, medical books, and the single-framed photograph of Alexander and me as children. The apartment's emptiness changed from mercy to invitation. I bought blue dishes because Nathan preferred white. I ordered a rust-colored sofa he would have called impractical. I hung artwork without measuring whether it matched the room. I slept diagonally across the bed. These were small freedoms. Their size did not diminish their meaning. One Saturday, my mother arrived without warning carrying 3 bags of groceries and an expression of theatrical injury. Your brother says you eat cereal for dinner. Your son exaggerates. He sent a photograph. He invaded my privacy. She unpacked vegetables, bread, salmon, and a pot of soup from our longtime housekeeper. My parents had returned from South America as soon as Alexander told them about the divorce. They were loving, embarrassed, and furious in alternating waves. My mother set down the soup. I should have seen it. I hid it. Mothers are supposed to see what daughters hide. Daughters become adults. We become very skilled. She touched my cheek. We approved the marriage because you loved him, not because we needed the alliance. I need you to know that. I know. Your father wants to buy Whitmore Development and fire him. I laughed. Please stop him. Alexander already did. Apparently, hostile acquisitions are not an emotionally healthy family activity. We ate soup at my new table. For the first time, I told her the truth about the wedding night, the unconsummated marriage, the appendix surgery, and the years of pleading. She cried quietly, not because I had failed, but because I had believed I needed to protect everyone from knowing I was unhappy. You were always such a capable child, she said. We praised you for not needing us. I wonder if we taught you the wrong lesson. The question echoed what Dr. Patel had been teaching me. Independence was not the absence of need. It was the freedom to choose where need could safely go. Cole sent messages every few weeks. Not flirtation. Weather reports. Photographs of the rebuilt clinic. News that Emma, the child rescued from the pantry, had returned to school. Once, a picture of a ridiculous paper crane with the caption, "My technique is deteriorating. Medical supervision required, ****. I answered when I wanted to. He never punished the gaps. Nathan's messages came only through counsel until the day Serena filed a civil claim against him, alleging promises of lifetime support and emotional damages. His attorney requested records that might involve me. Rachel explained that I could be subpoenaed but should not communicate directly. Serena's claim was legally weak. The affair was real. Her expectation that Nathan would marry her was not a contract. But the filing ensured another wave of headlines. Outside the courthouse after a preliminary hearing, reporters surrounded her. She wore dark glasses and a white coat and spoke about betrayal. He used me, she said. He made me believe he had chosen me, then abandoned me when his wife publicly shamed him. I watched the clip in Dr. Patel's waiting room. What do you feel? She asked. Pity. For her? For all three of us. We treated Nathan's choice like a prize. He treated being wanted by two women like evidence of value. And now? Now I want no part of the contest. Serena contacted me directly 2 days later from an unknown number. Tell him to settle. He owes me, ****. I forwarded the message to Rachel and blocked the number. Serena tried again by email. You think you're better because you wear a white coat. You stayed too, ****. That sentence landed because it was true. I had stayed. But recognizing my own mistake did not transfer responsibility for hers. I replied once, with Rachel's approval. Do not contact me again. Your dispute with Nathan is not mine. My decision to remain in an unhealthy marriage does not excuse your decision to participate in it. Further contact will be documented, ****. She did not answer. Nathan settled the claim without admitting a legal obligation. The amount covered Serena's medical costs, temporary housing, and counseling. It did not provide the lifetime she had imagined. She left Seattle soon afterward. I did not celebrate. Punishment had once seemed like the only shape justice could take. By then, I wanted something more useful, distance, truth, and systems that prevented repetition. The Harbor Response Initiative selected its first 2 fellows. One was a trauma surgeon from rural Idaho. The other was an emergency physician from a tribal health network in Alaska. During orientation, I spoke about the Redwood operation without naming Nathan. Clinical ethics are most visible when the patient is someone you dislike, I told them. But personal ethics are tested afterward. Saving a life does not obligate you to surrender yours. The sentence was quoted in a medical journal. Nathan read it. He sent no response. On the 90th day, the court could have finalized our divorce, but financial schedules and property transfers required another month. The delay annoyed me less than expected. Legally married no longer meant emotionally suspended. I had stopped waiting for the certificate to authorize my future. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, I received a package with no note. Inside was the custom platinum wedding band Nathan had worn beneath the rubble. The ring had been cleaned, but a deep scratch crossed its surface where concrete had struck it. Rachel confirmed it came through his attorney. No message? I asked. Only that it belongs to you if you want it, or you may dispose of it. I held the ring between two fingers. For years, it had symbolized the proof I lacked. Nathan wore it while protecting Serena. He wore it while allowing the public to imagine devotion to me. It was evidence of marriage and evidence of its emptiness. I took it to a jeweler. I did not sell it. I asked them to melt it down and create a small metal plate for the Harbor Response Initiative's simulation lab. No names. Only a sentence. Duty saves the patient. Boundaries save the healer, ***. Some objects did not need to be kept. They needed to be transformed. Chapter 11, The Work of Healing. A year after Redwood, I returned to a disaster site for the first time as an instructor rather than a responder. The exercise took place at a decommissioned military base outside Spokane. Concrete structures had been built to simulate collapse zones. Actors wore prosthetic wounds. Sirens, smoke machines, and timed aftershocks created controlled chaos. My job was to evaluate surgical teams in an austere environment. The first time a rescuer carried in a mannequin with a crushed leg, my vision narrowed. I stepped outside. No one died because I stepped outside. Peter took the station. I used grounding techniques Dr. Patel had taught me. Name 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear. Gray sky. Yellow tape. A red medical bag. Gravel beneath my boots. Cold air against my face. Cole found me near the edge of the training field. I had not known he would be there. His federal team was participating in the exercise, and he had arrived from Alaska the night before. Do you need space? He asked. The question itself was a form of care. No. I need to remember where I am. Spokane. Training base. No real patience. I know. Knowing and believing are different nervous system departments. I looked at him. Have you been reading psychology books? Your brother sent me one and threatened a quiz. We stood in silence until my breathing slowed. The turquoise helped, I said. I wore it on a thin chain beneath my shirt. Cole's gaze dropped briefly toward the hidden pendant, then returned to my face. Good. I should give it back. Do you feel home? I considered the question. Home was no longer Nathan's house, my parents' estate, or even the apartment with blue dishes. Home had become the moment I could remain inside my own body without apologizing. Sometimes, I said. Then keep it sometimes. We ate dinner that night with the training faculty. Cole sat across from me and argued with Peter about whether surgeons or rescue operators were more arrogant. Tara joined by video and declared both groups intolerable. Afterward, Cole walked me to the hotel. Are you still not asking for anything? I said. I am considering an amendment. My heart moved in a way I had not permitted for years. What amendment? Coffee tomorrow morning. Public place. 40 minutes. You may leave after 10. That sounds like a request. It is. Why now? Because you stepped out of a simulation, regulated yourself, and went back in. 6 months ago, you would have stayed until you collapsed. You find psychological progress attractive? Extremely. I laughed. Then fear arrived. Not fear of Cole. Fear of becoming the woman who organized her life around a man's attention again. I cannot promise this becomes anything. Coffee rarely requires a lifetime guarantee. You know what I mean. I do. I am not offering rescue, Claire. I am offering coffee. I said yes. The coffee lasted 53 minutes. We spoke about ordinary things. His grandmother's fishing boat. My mother's conviction that every problem could be solved with soup. His dislike of formal fundraisers. My secret enjoyment of terrible medical dramas. He did not ask about Nathan until I mentioned the divorce hearing scheduled for the following week. "Do you want me there?" he asked. I was surprised by the precision. "Not I'll be there." "Not you shouldn't face it alone." "No," I said. "Alexander and Rachel will be there." "All right." No disappointment used as pressure. I began to understand that safety was not the absence of desire. It was desire that did not punish refusal. The exercise continued for 2 more days. On the final afternoon, one of the fellows froze during a simulated pediatric triage. She was brilliant, fast, and ashamed of the hesitation. I recognized the expression immediately, the terror of being seen as less competent than the person everyone expected. I took her aside. "What happened?" I asked. "I knew the protocol. I just couldn't move." "Your body remembered something before your mind could organize it." Her eyes filled. "I should not be here." A year earlier, I might have agreed privately. Disaster medicine had little room for paralysis. Now I understood that the answer was not humiliation but preparation. "You should not lead that station today," I said. "That is different from saying you should never lead it. We identify the trigger, train around it, and build a backup plan. Competence includes knowing when to hand over control." She looked toward the simulation building. "Did that ever happen to you?" I could have protected my authority with a lie. "This morning," I said. The confession did not diminish me. It changed the room between us. That evening, I rewrote part of the fellowship curriculum. Every team would designate a second decision-maker before deployment. Every clinician would create a personal warning sign checklist: tremor, tunnel vision, irritability, memory gaps, reckless persistence. Rest would be documented with the same seriousness as medication. Samuel read the revision and wrote one comment in the margin: "Finally." The work of healing was not dramatic. It was administrative, repetitive, and often embarrassing. It meant sleep schedules, honest checklists, therapy appointments, and letting other capable people touch the work I once believed only I could carry. After the training exercise, Cole returned to Alaska. We spoke occasionally by phone. There were no declarations. No promises. Our connection grew in increments small enough that I could inspect each one. Meanwhile, Nathan's rehabilitation progressed. A newspaper published photographs of him walking with braces at a charity event. The headline called it a miraculous comeback. He contacted the reporter and corrected that too. "There is no miracle," he said. "There are surgeons, therapists, nurses, and thousands of hours of work." My former wife led the surgery that saved my life. Former wife. The divorce was not final yet, but he had begun using the term. I read the sentence without pain. At our last required mediation, Nathan arrived with a cane. He looked steadier, but every step remained deliberate. "I heard about the simulation lab," he said after the attorneys left us alone to review signatures. "The fellows are using it now." Evan showed me the plaque. I waited for him to object to the ring. He smiled sadly. "It is better than a drawer." "Yes." "Are you happy?" The question once would have felt like a test. "I am becoming honest," I said. "Happiness visits more often when I am." He nodded. "I thought pain would make me good." "Pain only makes you hurt. What you do with it is separate." Therapy says something similar, with more expensive words. We both smiled. For a brief moment, I could see the boy I had loved in the man he had become. The sight did not make me want him back. It made me grieve without bargaining. "Serena left the country," he said. "She took a position in Singapore. I hope she builds a life that does not require taking someone else's." "Do you hope the same for me?" I considered lying kindly. Instead, I said, yes. But I no longer need to witness it. He accepted that. When we left the office, he held the elevator door for me. For years earlier, such a gesture would have become evidence in my mind that he cared. Now it was simply courtesy. Healing, I discovered, was when ordinary things became ordinary again. Chapter 12, The Final Decree. Our divorce became final on a clear morning in February. The courthouse hallway smelled of coffee, wet wool, and floor polish. Couples sat on wooden benches with attorneys, folders, and expressions ranging from fury to exhaustion. Our case was uncontested by then. The financial transfers had cleared. The waterfront house had been placed in my name and listed for sale. The endowment was funded. Nathan and I had no children, no support dispute, and no remaining property to divide. The judge reviewed the agreement, asked whether both parties entered voluntarily, and signed the decree. 4 years of marriage ended with a pen stroke and a clerk saying, "You may collect certified copies downstairs." Nathan sat beside his attorney, his cane resting against the chair. I sat beside Rachel. Alexander occupied the back row, broad shoulders rigid beneath his coat. Outside the courtroom, Nathan and I faced each other. "So that's it," he said. "Yes." He reached into his coat and handed me a small envelope. I did not take it immediately. "What is it?" "A letter. No request. You can read it, burn it, or give it to your attorney." I accepted it. "Goodbye, Claire." "Goodbye, Nathan." He turned and walked away with the cane. Halfway down the corridor, his right foot caught slightly. His attorney reached out, but Nathan recovered alone. He did not look back. Alexander exhaled beside me. I still want to buy his company and fire him. No emotionally motivated acquisitions. I hate therapy language. You invented that rule. I was younger and idealistic. We went to lunch with Rachel, my parents, Samuel, and Tara. My mother brought a cake that said "Congratulations on your legal clarity," which embarrassed the restaurant staff more than me. I did not read Nathan's letter until evening. It was 6 pages, handwritten. He did not ask for forgiveness. He described specific memories: the appendix surgery he missed, the first anniversary, the medication baths he rejected, the airport interview, the surgery footage. He wrote that he had confused longing with love because longing required no daily responsibility. Serena remained perfect when absent. I became ordinary because I was present. He apologized for making ordinary devotion invisible. The final paragraph said, "You once asked why I could not love you properly. I thought the answer was that my heart belonged to someone else. The truth is less romantic. I did not know how to love anyone without making the feeling about myself. I hope you never again have to become smaller so someone else can feel large. ****. I folded the letter. I did not burn it. I placed it in a sealed box with the divorce decree, not because I planned to revisit it, but because refusing to erase the past was different from living inside it. Then I removed my wedding ring from the chain around my neck. Unlike Nathan's ring, mine had never been damaged. The platinum was smooth, the diamond clear. It looked untouched because the marriage it represented had never truly begun. I sold it. The money paid for 3 months of lodging for families whose children were transferred from rural Alaska to Seattle for complex surgery. Selling the waterfront house required one final visit. Rachel could have sent an inventory company, but I wanted to choose what stayed, what went, and what had never belonged to me emotionally even when my name appeared on the paperwork. The house was exactly as I had left it: the copper therapy tub, the labeled medication drawer, the pale rug Nathan's wheelchair had worn into 2 parallel tracks. In the kitchen, a jar of tea had expired. My handwriting on the label said "for cold nights." I stood there longer than I expected. Not because I wanted the life back. Because a version of me had worked very hard in those rooms. She had heated water, waited for headlights, folded blankets, and convinced herself that endurance would eventually be recognized as love. I had spent months feeling ashamed of her. In the empty kitchen, I finally felt tenderness instead. You did what you knew how to do, I told the room. I kept 3 things: my medical textbooks, a ceramic bowl my mother had made, and a photograph of the hospital team after Redwood. Nathan stood in the center in his wheelchair. I was at the edge, half hidden behind Tara. I kept it not for him, but for the people whose hands had held the line with mine. Everything else went to auction, donation, or storage for Nathan's attorney to collect. The proceeds from furniture I had purchased funded the family lodging program. The therapy equipment went to a rehabilitation nonprofit. The copper tub was removed by 4 irritated contractors and donated to an accessible wellness center. When I locked the door for the last time, I did not touch the frame or look back. I placed the key in the realtor's envelope and walked to my car. Closure was sometimes nothing more poetic than returning a key. In March, the waterfront house sold. I kept the apartment. I also purchased a small cabin outside the city near a lake, surrounded by cedar and hemlock. No family trust. No marital history. I paid for it from my surgical income and registered it in my name. The first weekend there, I discovered I did not know what to do with uninterrupted silence. I unpacked food, arranged books, and cleaned surfaces that were already clean. At dusk, I sat on the porch with tea and listened to frogs near the water. No one needed medication. No one expected dinner. No assistant called to explain an absence. The freedom felt less like flying and more like learning to stand without leaning toward another person. Cole called after sunset. Your brother says you bought a cabin. My brother is a security breach. He says the roof needs inspection. The roof was professionally inspected. He says you own 1 flashlight. I looked at the single flashlight on the kitchen counter. That is unrelated. Cole laughed. How was court? Final. A pause. How are you? Free. Sad. Hungry. What are you eating? Cereal. Your mother will be notified. Do not weaponize my family. Then make dinner. I did. Eggs, toast, and tomatoes cooked in a skillet. Cole stayed on the phone while I ate, but he did not turn the night into a celebration or make my divorce an opening for himself. Before hanging up, he said, "Congratulations on your legal clarity." I stared at the phone. My mother sent you a photograph of the cake. It was magnificent. Good night, Cole. Good night, Claire. I slept with the windows cracked open. In the morning, snow had fallen lightly across the porch. Beneath it, the first green shoots of spring pushed through the soil. Chapter 13, The Season That Returned. The following year was the quietest important year of my life. I published 2 papers on vascular trauma in low-resource environments. The Harbor Response Initiative expanded to 4 hospitals and created a mental health protocol for deployed medical teams. I became the youngest full professor of surgery in Northwest's history, a fact my mother announced to everyone from her dentist to a stranger in the grocery store. Nathan's life moved beyond the edge of mine. He stepped down as chief executive of Whitmore Development and remained chairman while a professional manager took over daily operations. His civil settlement with Serena concluded. He continued rehabilitation and began funding accessibility projects without attaching the story of his injury to every donation. Once, I saw him across a ballroom at a medical fundraiser. He stood with a cane beside an older architect. Our eyes met. He inclined his head. I returned the gesture. That was all. I had once believed closure would be a dramatic final conversation. In reality, it was the day seeing him no longer altered the temperature of my body. Cole left federal service in late summer. Alexander announced the news over dinner as if presenting an investment opportunity. Mercer is moving to Seattle. I nearly dropped my fork. Why? He is launching an emergency logistics company. Mobile clinics, satellite communications, cold weather shelter systems. The Northwest is a logical headquarters. Did he tell you to say that? No. He told me not to say anything until the lease was signed. And you immediately said something. I waited 11 hours. Cole arrived in October. He rented an office in an industrial district south of downtown and hired engineers, former emergency managers, and logistics specialists. His first major contract involved modular clinics for rural communities. The company was not a romantic gesture. It had a business plan, investors, and clients. That mattered to me. He built a life near mine without making me responsible for it. We began with coffee again. Then dinner. Then a hike during which he carried 3 flashlights because Alexander had apparently discussed my equipment deficiencies in detail. On our 4th date, I told him I sometimes woke from dreams of the Redwood operating tent. What do you need when that happens? He asked. Usually space. Sometimes a voice reminding me where I am. Which one tonight? A voice. He sat on the floor beside the sofa, not touching me, and described the cabin: cedar walls, blue blanket, rain on the roof, a mug on the table. Present facts. No promises. On our 6th date, I kissed him. He went still. Is this all right? I asked. I am attempting not to frighten you with enthusiasm. I laughed against his mouth. Our relationship was not effortless. Healthy did not mean frictionless. Cole's work sent him into dangerous places. My surgical schedule made plans uncertain. He became quiet when afraid. I became controlling when uncertain. We learned to name those patterns before they became punishments. The first time Cole visited the cabin, he arrived with a toolbox, 2 emergency radios, and enough food for a week. This is a date, I said. This is a structural risk assessment with dinner. The cabin was inspected. The inspector failed to note your lack of a carbon monoxide detector in the loft. He installed one while I cooked. I resented how naturally his competence fit into the space. The resentment surprised me until Dr. Patel helped me name it. Care still felt like the beginning of debt. That night, I told Cole. When you fix things here, part of me starts calculating what you will expect later. He set down his fork. Thank you for telling me. You're not offended? I am sad someone trained you to expect a bill. But no. The detector is not a contract. What if I never become comfortable needing you? Then I hope you become comfortable choosing me. Need is not the only reason people stay. We wrote a ridiculous cabin agreement on a paper napkin. Repairs above $50 required discussion. Surprise gifts could be refused without explanation. Either person could ask for solitude. Neither person could use help as evidence in an argument. We signed it and taped it inside a kitchen cabinet. Months later, when a pipe burst during a freeze, I called him before calling a plumber. Not because he was obligated to fix it. Because I wanted his company while I solved it. That distinction felt like another season changing. During our first serious argument, he accepted a 2-week deployment to a hurricane zone and told me after the decision was made. The old fear exploded. You decided and informed me, I said. Nathan did that for years. Cole's expression closed. I am not Nathan. Then don't use his methods. He left my apartment angry. An hour later, he returned. You were right, he said. The deployment is my decision, but partnership means letting you into the decision before it becomes an announcement. I was afraid you would ask me not to go. Would you have stayed? No. Then why tell me? Because hearing your fear is not the same as obeying it. That answer repaired something in me. We could disagree without abandonment. We could be angry without becoming cruel. We could return before pride hardened into silence. Cole deployed. I worried. He checked in when possible. I continued operating, teaching, and sleeping in my own bed. When he came back, he did not expect me at the airport. I went anyway. He emerged through the doors carrying one duffel bag, tired and sunburned. The moment he saw me, the severity left his face. You're here. I chose to be. Choice became the center of us. In early spring, Alexander invited us to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the water. Halfway through the meal, he received a call and left with suspicious speed. A server arrived carrying a bouquet of pale pink begonias wrapped in white paper. Cole took the flowers and handed them to me. Your brother says you're not ready for anything dramatic, he said. My brother discusses me too much. He also says spring is a good season and I have waited long enough to be direct. I looked at the flowers. Begonias had bloomed outside my parents' house every year of my childhood. They survived rain, neglect, and unexpected cold, returning with cheerful stubbornness. Direct about what? I asked. Cole's eyes were clear, serious, and a little nervous. I would like the position of your boyfriend to become official. Benefits negotiable. Performance reviews welcome. I laughed. You moved across the country, started a company, survived federal rescue work, and this is your proposal? I was told not to be dramatic. By Alexander? By you, repeatedly. He was right. I touched the turquoise at my throat. All right, I said. You can get on the list. What number? 1. His smile was worth every season it had taken to reach. Chapter 14, The Choice to Stay. 6 months after Cole became my official boyfriend, I was offered the chair of trauma surgery at a hospital in Boston. It was the kind of offer people built careers toward: a nationally ranked department, protected research funding, authority to hire my own faculty, and enough money to make even Alexander impressed. The search committee called it the natural next step. My mother called it proof that the East Coast had finally developed taste. I did not tell Cole for 3 days. That frightened me more than the decision itself. I had spent years accusing Nathan of making choices privately and presenting them as accomplished facts. Now I was carrying an offer letter in my bag, rehearsing possible futures alone. The reasons sounded respectable. Cole's company was new. His life was finally rooted in Seattle. I did not want him to feel pressured. I wanted to decide based on my career. All of that was true. It was also avoidance. On the 4th night, we ate dinner at the cabin. I placed the letter beside his plate. Cole read it slowly. His face revealed nothing until the end. This is significant, he said. Yes. Do you want it? I don't know. He folded the letter. When do they need an answer? 3 weeks. And when were you planning to tell me? The calm question carried more hurt than anger. Tonight. You received it Monday. I needed time to think. Thinking alone is allowed. Concealing a decision that affects us until you have organized my reaction is not. I bristled. I haven't made a decision. Then why do you look guilty? Because part of me had already begun building an exit. Not because I wanted Boston, but because leaving first still felt safer than needing someone to discuss whether I stayed. I didn't want you to ask me to give it up, I said. Cole pushed back from the table. Have I ever asked you to become smaller for me? No. Then do not punish me in advance for what Nathan did. The sentence landed hard. He went outside. I gave him 10 minutes, then followed. He stood at the edge of the lake with his hands in his coat pockets. You're right, I said. I know. You could pretend humility for 30 seconds. Not while angry. I stood beside him. I am afraid that if I ask what you want, I will start organizing my answer around it. Then ask, listen, and still choose. What do you want? Cole looked across the dark water. I want you here. I want Tuesday dinners, weekends at this cabin, and the possibility that we build a life in the same city. I also want you to take the job if it is the work you truly want. I would hate the distance. I would not hate you. There it was, desire without command. Would you move? I asked. Not immediately. My company employs 43 people who moved here because I asked them to believe in it. I cannot treat their lives as luggage. So we would be long distance. For a while. We would see whether the relationship could support it. No heroic promises. We spent the next 2 weeks examining the choice as though it were a complex case. I visited Boston. I met the department. I reviewed budgets, faculty retention, call schedules, and the promises hidden behind recruitment language. Cole never said stay. He asked what work energized me and what parts of the offer appealed to ego rather than purpose. The answer surprised me. I wanted authority to expand trauma systems and rural partnerships. I did not particularly want Boston. The Harbor Response Initiative already allowed me to build those systems in the Northwest, where the need was immediate and the relationships real. The title was larger. The work was not necessarily better. I declined the offer and negotiated a new role at Northwest, Vice Chair for Trauma Systems, with funding to expand the initiative across 5 states and Alaska. When I told Cole, he did not say, "You chose me." He asked, "Are you certain?" Yes. Why? Because staying is the career decision I want. You are part of the life I want here, but you are not the price I paid for it. He kissed my forehead. Good answer. There was a committee. I assumed. The new role brought me into contact with Whitmore Development one final time. The company had won a contract to reinforce hospitals and emergency shelters against seismic damage. Nathan attended the planning session as chairman. He entered using a cane and took a seat across the table. Our names appeared on opposite sides of the agenda, his company responsible for structural systems, my program responsible for medical continuity. We spoke professionally. He did not refer to our past. I did not soften recommendations to protect him. When his engineers proposed a cost-saving design that reduced backup oxygen storage, I rejected it. Nathan asked technical questions, reviewed the risk analysis, and supported the more expensive option. After the meeting, he waited by the elevator. I heard about Boston, he said. News travels. You stayed. I did. He looked as if he wanted to ask whether I had stayed for Cole. He chose not to. The program you're building is important, he said instead. Thank you. The elevator arrived. Claire, he said, I used to think losing you was the punishment. It wasn't. The punishment was realizing I had never known you well enough to understand what I lost. There was a time that sentence would have satisfied something wounded in me. Now it was simply true and sad. Then know the next person, I said. Before you ask her to build a life around you. He nodded. The doors closed between us. That evening, I drove to the cabin. Cole was repairing a loose porch board. Begonias waited in nursery pots beside the steps, ready for spring planting. How was the meeting? He asked. Productive. Was he there? Yes. Cole studied my face. Do you want to talk about it? No. All right. I changed into old clothes and knelt beside him to measure the flower bed. The soil was cold and dark beneath my fingers. We argued about spacing, read the planting instructions, and decided the directions were overly conservative. Nothing dramatic happened. That was why it mattered. I had spent so much of my life believing love announced itself through crisis, motel rooms refused, bodies shielding bodies, surgeries lasting through dawn, men crossing frozen states in wheelchairs. Now I understood another form. A person could stay without being trapped. A person could leave without betraying. A choice could include love without being consumed by it. We planted the begonias together. Epilogue: begonias still smile in the spring wind. 2 springs later, the begonias at the cabin bloomed before anything else. I had planted them along the porch after Cole and I began spending weekends there together. The first winter killed half. I assumed the rest were gone. Then April warmed the soil, and green stems appeared beneath old leaves. Life did not return in the same shape. It returned altered, persistent, and unexpectedly bright. Cole and I were not married. People found this puzzling. My mother had begun leaving bridal magazines in strategic locations. Alexander claimed neutrality while interviewing Cole about retirement accounts. Tara referred to him as the long-term emergency contact and considered herself hilarious. Marriage no longer frightened me. I simply refused to use it as proof that love was real. Cole understood. He kept his apartment in the city for the first year. I kept mine. We shared the cabin, groceries, travel, and an increasingly unreasonable number of flashlights. We wrote legal agreements before combining any finances. Romance did not suffer from clarity. It became safer inside it. The Harbor Response Initiative graduated its 3rd class that spring. Emma, the girl Cole rescued in Alaska, attended the ceremony with her parents. She was 9 now, missing 2 front teeth and entirely unimpressed by adults. She presented Cole with a paper crane and me with a drawing of a surgeon wearing a superhero cape. Surgeons do not wear capes, I told her. You should, she said. Infection control would object. Cole leaned down. She objects to joy professionally. I elbowed him. After the ceremony, a reporter asked me what achievement made me proudest. For a moment, I saw another microphone, another airport, Nathan in a wheelchair beneath television lights. Then the image passed. Learning that saving people does not require losing yourself, I said. The answer was not dramatic enough to become a viral clip. I preferred it that way. Nathan sent a note to the initiative once a year with the foundation's donation receipt. No personal message. Serena's name stopped appearing in the Seattle press. Alexander heard she had opened a design studio overseas. I hoped it succeeded. Forgiveness had become less important than release. The following week, I returned the turquoise pendant. Not because I no longer valued it, but because I finally understood Cole had not given it to secure a future. I placed it in his palm at the cabin. I think I got home, I said. He closed his fingers around the stone, then opened them again. My grandmother told me it had 2 jobs, he said. Bring me home, and help me recognize home when I saw it. He fastened the pendant around my neck again. Are you changing the terms of the loan? Yes. Permanent transfer. No repayment expected. I touched the cool stone. I accept. Later that summer, we traveled to Taku Valley for the opening of the rebuilt clinic. The building stood on reinforced foundations with a metal roof designed for heavy snow. Solar batteries powered the emergency room. A wall inside displayed the names of residents who had died and the volunteers who had served. My name was there, smaller than I expected and larger than I wanted. The man whose wife I had operated on found me in the crowd. His wife stood beside him, healthy, holding the hand of their youngest child. He touched the cedar bracelet still tied around my wrist and said something in Tlingit. Cole translated. He says the doctor returned in spring, so the valley knows winter did not win. I looked around at the clinic, the families, the mountain slopes green beneath melting snow. For years, I had thought survival meant defeating what hurt you. Taku Valley taught me survival could mean building after it, with the damage included in the foundation plan. That night, Cole and I stood outside beneath a sky that never became fully dark. He did not ask me to promise forever. I did not ask him to prove anything through sacrifice. We simply stood there, alive and visible to each other. On the anniversary of the Redwood earthquake, I visited the simulation lab. The metal plate made from Nathan's wedding ring remained beside the entrance. Duty saves the patient. Boundaries save the healer, ***. A new fellow stood reading it. Dr. Hart, she asked, who wrote that? Someone who learned it late. I did not explain. That evening, Cole and I drove to the cabin. Rain had stopped, leaving the road shining beneath the sunset. He cooked dinner while I sat on the porch reviewing a manuscript. His cooking had improved from dangerous to acceptable, though he used too much garlic and considered measurements a personal insult. After dinner, he brought 2 cups of tea outside. Your brother asked when I'm proposing, he said. I looked at him over the rim of my cup. And what did you say? That proposals are operationally sensitive. Coward. I also said I would ask the person whose answer matters. The old version of me would have tensed, searching his face for the future I was supposed to want. Instead, I waited. Cole set down his cup. Do you want to marry me someday? No ring. No audience. No family arrangement. No debt disguised as destiny. A question. Someday, I said. Yes. Not now? Not tonight. Good. I haven't bought a ring. Excellent planning. He leaned back, apparently satisfied. That's all? I asked. You answered. I believe you. The simplicity of it filled my chest with warmth. I moved closer and rested my head against his shoulder. Beneath the porch, rainwater dripped from the eaves. The begonias lifted their faces toward the clearing sky. Once, I had mistaken suffering for devotion and waiting for loyalty. I had believed love meant making myself useful enough that someone would finally choose me. Now I knew better. Love was not the body thrown over another in falling concrete, though courage could live there. It was not the surgeon refusing to stop, though duty could live there. Love was the daily practice of seeing and being seen. It was asking before deciding. Returning after anger. Accepting no without punishment. Offering care without turning it into debt. It was a home with 2 doors and no locks on the inside. The spring wind moved through the trees. The begonias trembled, then lifted again. They were still smiling. So was I. For more exciting content, please subscribe and follow us.